It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, April 19th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful Tuesday? We've got some current news from around the world, looking into the book of Romans, and thoughts of the week on balancing family and Provi life. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? It is a wonderful Tuesday, isn't it? Monday's in the books, and that hard day is finally finished, and let's get into the thick of the week. So hope you guys are enjoying your week thus far. I'm really thankful that all of you guys are joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. So keep liking and commenting, and want to hear from you guys. And it's time to build the community through the ups and downs. Yes, during this podcast, some of you are listening at like super spiritual highs, some in the middle, some in the lows, some in the lowest of lows. But hey, this is a place for all of us to be. There's no judging over here. We all want to make sure that we do well. So make sure you put it into the comments. Well, you don't have to put like you're doing terribly bad in the comments, but let's just make it a community we can build each other up in, all right? So I had, for me, it's very interesting because I've been with my parents and my family for about 4 months now. And a lot of thoughts going on right now when it comes to family life and Provi life, and just understanding the importance of family too in this world right now. So I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I'm going to leave that to the very, very end. Okay, and of course, one of the things that people do talk about is giving your life up for this history. What does it actually mean, right? What does it mean you have to throw away? So that's kind of some of the things I'm going to talk about at the last segment of Thoughts of the Week. But yesterday was not yesterday, Sunday. Sunday I thought was quite interesting for me because Sunday was a day on the Sunday service, in the Sunday message, something was talking about how you should spend your Sunday. And he said things that, some things that a lot of us might feel guilty about is reading the Bible, right? So I was looking at that like going, oh, that's so true. Let me get back into the Bible, spend this Sunday in a very, what's that right word? I want to spend it in the proper way. So what I did was, I'm not much of, I like reading, but I'm also doing a lot of different things at the same time. So I listened to the book of Romans, the audio Bible. So I listened to the audio Bible in Romans, and I got all the way to chapter 8. And because that's where the message is for this week. And then I also listened to like historical background and context of where the book of Romans comes from and how Paul wrote it, why he wrote it. And that's what I'm going to do when I talk about today's word study is going to be in the book of Romans. And like I was listening to a bunch of different stuff on the Bible, like the intertestamental period between Malachi and Jesus, getting a refresher on that just to make sure that it's always in my head, understanding what type of time it was that Jesus was living in. So I had a very, very productive Sunday. How about you guys? Like, I'm getting excited because I'm just one more day closer to going to Texas. It's a time for me to just get away for a bit, and I hope it's something that all of us will be able to do, whether it's a staycation inside your area or going out somewhere else. And for me, it's kind of cool because American Canada, we're kind of like out of the COVID protocol, so I'm not really worried about like putting on masks again and doing all the other stuff like that. So I'm pretty excited about going over there too, because they got really good food and there's like really good people over there at the church too. Thursday night, we have a new talk on Espresso with Sky, and it is the biggest reason your prayer life is weak. Yeah, so why is our prayer life so weak? What is it inside of our mentality, our mindset, our environment? What is the thing that stops us or holds us back from praying well? All right, so I hope you guys will enjoy that too. Make sure you like and comment just to push that algorithm to get more and more people to watch. And of course, this Sunday edition, we have Lena Choi from Australia. Great interview. She is the translator right now, learning about her journey into this history, even though she's second gen. Very, very interesting story. I hope you guys will really enjoy that too. Okay, so let's get this show started on the road. On this wonderful Tuesday, we're going to start off with Dia Wings from Korea with their latest single that came out on 3/16, and that song is We're Going Up Now. And they are collaborating with another Providence rapper there, so it's really, really good. That second song is Kumachang from Japan with his 2022 version of The Great Blessing. And last but not least, we have Renee Lai from Taiwan, and this is her first original song. That song is called I See.
때론 자유로움이 내 안에 차올라 Nobody can describe me, I know who I am 정해진 운명 따윈 믿지 않아 I don't care All limitations are set by yourself 내 길이 전에 오늘 정해져 있는 길이라고 누가 말했어요 어느 길을 가든 내가 선택하면 가는 거지 앞에 놓인 두 가지 길 중에
난 배우고 알았으니 자유로움이 벅차오른 이유 날개가 돋아난 내 I'm free 거기에 도착한 내 덕분에
I can't help loving myself 나만의 diamonds 나만의 crown One who wants to wear the crown Wear the crown, then wear the crown
We're going up now. Keep going, that's right. Keep moving, that's right. You ready? Be strong. We're going up now. Keep going, that's right. Keep moving, that's right. You ready? Be strong. We're going up now.
뭣도 모르고 뭣도 모르는 것들 법을 모르니 덫에 걸린 적들 있지 난 달러만을 찾지 않아 성공 법칙 just do it 내 자신을 kill it 매일 새로 태어나 아닌 그냥 자연스럽게 그리 살지 정해 아니 연속된 굴레에서 벗어나 새롭게 깨어나
근데 나는 집이 틀거리던 데 좀 더 예쁜 톤으로 좀 더 나를 튠하고 만들어 myself 다 들어오른만 내 때를 바꿔도 Call me on the whole of the smooth watch 너 높이 올라가고 싶다며 그럼 너부터 만든다며 눌러봐 새롭지가 매다매 졸았어도 밤에도 빛나는 다이아몬드
もう終わり令和の時代成長下から戦う時代うまくいかないうまくやれないことが多いけど決して諦めないあれから7年の月日が経ち巻いた種は少しずつ芽を出し今すべて捨てられざらいあなたに告げて Be alright どんなに険しい道のりでも果てない壁に阻まれても It's fly away Fly away、yeah、天高く頂上目指す観難の波が押し寄せてもこんなに愛が溢れてるから立ち上がれ立ち上がれ、yeah、一人じゃない It's your love
最高の祝福得る時代愛そうこれからの未来に期待世界はまだまるで瞑想未来永劫したくない戦争この時代に訪れた平和最も大きな愛をくれたメシアただ確信してずっと愛そう感謝が溢れる死の栄光
どんなに険しい道のりでも果てない壁に阻まれても It's fly away Fly away、yeah、天高く頂上目指す観難の波が押し寄せてもこんなに愛が溢れてるから立ち上がれ立ち上がれ、yeah、一人じゃないパワーオブラブ主の愛とその恵み忘れないで御言葉を行って御言葉を通し全てに勝って主の軍隊となり黄金の城へ前進する主と共に溢れる祝福をくださった惜しみなくくださった主に感謝する永遠に主のそばで生きられる夢ではない現実主を愛します最高の祝福をくださった心は天国です感謝します主と輝く歴史なそう私を使ってください愛してます愛してます
我看见主的模样 So alive So alive 我听见主的声音 So clear so clear， 他的爱融化我心，使我灵魂安然平静。那话语充满能力，使我能看见改变的神迹。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心持守我对天地约定。我看见历史前进着 So alive So alive 我听见话语满溢着 So clear So clear 主的爱始终如一，不曾改变，使我能完全沉浸。主话语确实不必，使我能体会神爱的旨意。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心持守我对天地约定。数天的路我越走越确信，感谢圣灵强烈引导我心灵。当大有主同在包围世纪，我会怀抱感谢忠诚世间到底。主啊，我爱你。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心持守我对天地约定。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心持守我对天地约定。我看见主的模样 So alive So alive
And there it is. That was Renee live from Taiwan with her original song, her first, which is I See. Before that, Kuma-chan from Japan with the Greatest Blessing 2022 remix. Not remix, but a new, like a new way of covering that song. And last but not least, our featured artist of the day, that is Dio Wings from Korea with We're Going Up Now. All right, so let us get into some news going on around the world. And of course, we need to hear the news to see what God is doing in the world, to see the travesties we can comfort his heart in, and also looking at the things that we really need to pray about with knowing the situation even more. And of course, we're going to start off with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. All right, so let's take a look at some of the things that we have missed over the last 24 hours. Firstly, Ukrainian officials say Russian bombardment of several cities across the country has killed at least 9 people. 7 people died when multiple missiles hit the western city of Lviv, which had largely escaped attack until now. Also, 2 people have been killed after shelling in the northern city of Kharkiv, the Ukraine says. And the capital, Kyiv, and the southern city of Mykolaiv near the port of Odessa are among other cities where shelling is reported. Now, Ukraine and Russia have again failed to agree on safe escape routes for civilians trapped in besieged areas, including the shattered city of Mariupol. The UN is reporting that more than 4.9 million Ukrainians have now fled the country as a result of the war. So we see that now Russia is beginning kind of a new offensive in the east, right? So Ukraine's Armed Forces Command says it sees signs that Russia is beginning its new offensive in eastern Ukraine. The General Staff of the Armed Forces posted on social media that Russia's main efforts were now focused on establishing complete control of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, with military action also intensifying in Kharkiv. Now, it added that the fight for Mariupol continued and Russian military were focusing on gaining complete control of the area. And it also said Russia continued to violate the rules of international humanitarian law and was blocking initiatives to evacuate civilians from occupied settlements. And of course, some of the what else is happening because of this war? Other countries are being affected, and now Germany's conundrum over its ties with Russia is a big thing, right? So when you think about Germany, they're repenting a lot of historical wrongs, and that is kind of a national pastime, right? But even by German standards, the soul searching over Berlin's Russia policy is quite remarkable. So since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th, many German politicians have publicly admitted they got Vladimir Putin wrong. Now, even German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has apologized, saying it was a mistake to use trade and energy to build bridges with Moscow. And they basically said it's a bitter acknowledgement that for 30 years, they emphasized dialogue and cooperation with Russia. And now they have to recognize that it hasn't worked, and that's why they've entered a new era for European security. And this new era was dubbed as, Germans out there, you have to help me with this, Zeitenwende. Zeitenwende, I think. Literally meaning a turning point. So yeah, if I've butchered that German, Zeitenwende, which means turning point, and they dubbed it this by the Germany's SPD Chancellor Olaf Scholz in a now famous speech in the German parliament a few days after the invasion. And it basically means scrapping rules about weapons exports, a huge boost in defense spending, and an end to Russian energy imports. A Russian gas pipeline to Germany called Nord Stream 2 has already been suspended. So that is kind of what we're seeing going on with this Russia-Ukraine crisis. So let's move on to China. Now, China has finally reported that people have died from the COVID outbreak. Now, you guys got to know how long it's been that they've reported any deaths, okay? China has reported the deaths of 3 people from COVID in Shanghai for the first time since the hub entered lockdown in late March. Okay, so a release from the City Health Commission said the victims were aged 89 to 91 and unvaccinated, and Shanghai officials said only 38% of residents over 60 are fully vaccinated. The city is now due to enter another round of mass testing, which means a strict lockdown will continue into a 4th week for most residents. Until now, China had maintained that no one died of COVID in the city, a claim that has increasingly come into question. Monday's deaths were also the first COVID-linked fatalities to be officially acknowledged by authorities in the entire country since March 2020. And since the discovery of an Omicron-led outbreak 3 weeks ago, the city has been under strict lockdown, which has angered residents. Millions confined to their homes. We're talking about a city of 25 million people. Anyone testing positive being sent to quarantine centers. Now, in recent weeks, many have taken to social media to complain about the restrictions and the lack of food supplies, and people have had to order in food and water and wait for government drop-offs of vegetables, meat, and eggs, and analysts say many are running low on supplies. The lockdown extension has overwhelmed delivery services, grocery shop websites, and even the distribution of government supplies, but with more than 20,000 new cases a day, authorities are struggling, and the city in recent weeks has converted exhibition halls and schools into quarantine centers and set up makeshift hospitals. The recent surge in cases in China, although small compared to some countries, is a significant challenge to China's zero COVID strategy, which uses swift lockdowns and aggressive restrictions to contain any outbreak. Now, the policy sets China apart from most other countries which are trying to live with the virus, but the increased transmissibility and milder nature of the Omicron variant has led to questions over whether the current strategy is sustainable in the long run. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to go into Korea, South Korea, North Korea. We did hear just a couple days ago about the missile talks So U.S., South Korea are urging the North to return to talks after missile tests. Diplomats say Seoul and Washington agreed to the need for a strong response to North Korea's tests, but are open to dialogue. The U.S. Special Envoy for North Korea has said that Washington and Seoul agree on the need for a strong response to North Korea's recent spat of missile tests, though they remain open to dialogue with the country. Now, Sung Kim and his deputy Jung Pak met South Korean officials, including nuclear envoy No Kyu-duk, after arriving in Seoul early on Monday for a 5-day visit. The talks come a day after North Korean state media reported that leader Kim Jong-un had observed the test firing of a new type of tactical guided weapon. And of course, they're trying to they're aimed at boosting the country's nuclear capabilities, and it was basically North Korea's 13th round of firing so far this year. Okay, U.S. led diplomacy to convince North Korea to abandon its nuclear ambitions in return for economic and political rewards has been largely stalemated since 2019, when former President Donald Trump walked out of a summit meeting in Hanoi, Vietnam. The U.S. has said it is open to talks with North Korea at any time and without conditions, but Pyongyang has so far rebuffed those overtures, accusing Washington of maintaining hostile policies such as sanctions and military drills. So Kim's arrival in Seoul coincided with the start of a 9-day annual joint military drill by U.S. and South Korean forces. The exercise consists of defensive command post training using computer simulations and will not involve field maneuvers by troops, South Korea's military said on Sunday. So South Korea's nuclear envoy said they shared concerns that North Korea will likely continue to engage in acts that raise regional tensions and urge North Korea to return to talks. And basically said the allies have not closed the door on diplomacy with North Korea and have no hostile intent towards the country. And he repeated his earlier statement that U.S. diplomats are ready to meet North Korea anywhere without any conditions. North Korea has previously responded to joint U.S. South Korean military drills with missile tests and warlike rhetoric. And on Sunday, it said it had tested a new tactical guided weapon a day earlier that would boost its nuclear strike capability. Analysts said the weapon was likely a short-range ballistic missile that can be mounted with a tactical nuclear warhead capable of targeting South Korea. And last month, North Korea test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile potentially capable of reaching the continental U.S. in its first long-range weapons test since November 2017. All right. So that is the top 3 news going on around the world. Hope it's something that you guys can keep in mind as you pray and as you're looking at all the different things that are happening and being able to pray to God about those things too. Okay. So that leads us into some sporting news. Nothing new on the NHL slate because none of the teams that affect the Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs are playing, but we are playing a big game tonight against Dallas. They are ahead of us. We need to beat them in regulation time. So let's hope that works tonight. But we're going to start off with the NBA playoffs. In the East, we had number 1 Miami taking on number 8 Atlanta. They defeat them 115-91. Jimmy Butler, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Also on the second slate, great game. It was Boston versus Brooklyn, and last second shot by Jason Tatum to win the game. That was 115-114, Boston over Brooklyn. Jason Tatum, 31 points, 8 assists. Kyrie Irving, 39 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists in a losing effort. That's going to be a great series. Milwaukee also in the East, defeating Chicago 93-86. Giannis Antetokounmpo with 27 points and 16 rebounds. And then, of course, number 1 in the West, the Phoenix Suns defeating the New Orleans Pelicans 110-99. Chris Paul with 30 points, 7 rebounds, and 10 assists. All right. So let's also get into some soccer. What kind of soccer is going on around the world? We're going to start off with the FA Cup. In the semifinals, Chelsea against Crystal Palace. The other day, it was Liverpool getting into the finals, and it's Chelsea prevailing over Crystal Palace 2-0, and they will face the final against Liverpool. So that's going to be a great match. It could be Liverpool's second trophy this year. In Spain, Real Madrid defeats Sevilla and 3-2, and they were down 2-0, and they came back, and of course, Benzema with another game winner. Atletico Madrid 2-1 over Espanyol. In German Bundesliga, it's Bayern Munich 3-0 over Arminia Bielefeld. In France, PSG defeating Marseille 2-1, Neymar and Mbappe with the 2 goals. And last but not least in sports, we have some boxing news. Welterweight championship, it was Errol Spence Jr. versus Yordenis Ugas. And this happened over the weekend, and Errol Spence has 2 of the belts. Ugas has 1 of the belts, and what happened was basically whoever wins unifies 3 of the 4 major belts. And in an amazing fight, Spence almost gets knocked down in the 6th. Great 7th round exchanging shots, but then by the time it hit the 10th round, Ugas, his eye was swollen shut, and the doctor stopped the fight. So Errol Spence Jr., 10th round TKO, unites 3 of the 4 belts, and the only belt left is owned by Terence Crawford, and this is the fight that everyone's been waiting for. It looks like it's going to go down, and whoever wins will unite all the belts together, so it's going to be a wild fight, and this fight has been, it's the one that everyone's been talking about since the very beginning, okay? So, with that in mind, that is the top 3 news in sports and top 3 news, world news too, which leads us into the golden time. Wow, this one seems like a very, very fast podcast today. I'm not sure. Am I speaking fast? But I already feel like I'm just running through this. Okay, I'm going to slow down a bit. But we're going to get into the golden time, which is perfect because when we get spiritual, we need to slow things down and contemplate and think about all the different things that are happening and think about our own faith too, especially with this week's message of know why you believe in God. Okay, so let's start off with secretly the Lord has come. And then we'll go into Please Call Me. I really, really like this. I haven't heard this song in a while, and it's really inspiring for me. And then, of course, we'll end things off with The Scops Isle in My Hometown. So, as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Secretly, yes, come, blink of an eye, secretly, in the blink of an eye.
Secretly he's come. When I heard his word I changed. Though I wavered, now my mind's made up. My mind's made up. My heart was filled with joy, and my eyes welled up with tears. I have found the fire of first love again. With one glance, the Lord has taken hold of me. My heart is His completely. The voice I heard that day, I simply cannot explain. I wanna see Him again and again. I'll lay down my thoughts and I will follow Him. Secretly, your Lord came with the word. I love Him truly, I love the Lord. Oh, I love Him who's come secretly. Secretly, yes, come, blink of an eye, secretly, in the blink of an eye. Secretly, yes, come, blink of an eye, secretly, in the blink of an eye. One glance, the Lord has taken hold of me. My heart is His completely. The voice I heard that day, I simply cannot explain. I wanna see Him again and again. I'll lay down my thoughts and I will follow Him.
yes. Come, blink of an eye, blink of an eye. Secretly in the blink of an eye. Secretly, yes, yes. Come, yes, yes. Come, blink of an eye, blink of an eye. Secretly in the blink of an eye. When the Lord comes, when He's in no, please won't you call me? When the Lord comes and appears in providence, please come and tell me. I've waited so long for my Lord to come. Finally He's come. Now He is calling me. Now He has come, bringing God's word. God was waiting for Him, I waited too. Until the moon rises till the stars shine. Share with me all the stories of times when we could not meet. All that you went through, won't you tell me, please? Though you haven't said much, all of your stories carry stories deeper still. Every pain and struggle, all that you've done. And for us too, we have deep stories. In those days, tribulation struck like a storm, harsh winds of endless persecution. We were left questioning, can we meet with the Lord again? The ideal world, can it be fulfilled? Deep in thought, we worried and wondered. I cannot forget all those times come to mind. Truly we didn't know that in the future history would change like this, rising brightly. Truly God, you're great, you're almighty, you're omniscient. Truly my Lord, you're tenacious, powerful, you endure, you do it to completion. We cannot help but cry out, truly great, the Lord is truly great. We did well to believe and follow, truly we did. This is what I have realized.
downtown, hear the scalp sound, hooting, hooting, crying all night, sorrowful, haunting. Hear the reply, cuckoo, cuckoo. Why do they cry out? What do they say? Suffering out in the wind, through the snowstorms and the rainstorms, all those years of struggling. History now has bloomed, God's will has come true so abundantly. So for this the cuckoo and the owl cried out all those years. Human clouds gather from all across the world the whole year round. 월명동 fills and overflows as the bright sky. History where the flowers bloom and the fruit is so lovely. Glory to our God, and on earth true peace. Here we all rapture through love in this ideal world. History where the flowers bloom and the fruit is so lovely. Glory to our God, and on earth true peace. Here we all rapture through love in this ideal world. Glory to our God, and on earth true peace. Here we all rapture through love in this ideal world. Glory to our God, and on earth true peace. Here we all rapture through love in this ideal world.
and that is The Scops Owl in My Hometown. Hope you guys really enjoyed that old school song. Before that, Please Call Me, very, very deep Shimjonic song. And of course, that first one reminds us of the Holy Spirit movement. That is Secretly the Lord Has Come, that very jazzy version, okay? So let's, now that our hearts are a little bit more spiritual, let's get into the word study for today. And of course, we are going to get into the book of Romans, all right? So let's take a look at Romans, and we're going to take a look at the background and what's the reason why Paul wrote this, okay? So just to let you guys know, we're coming from a view, like a Christian view, like a theological view, or how people have perceived it. And it's not as easy as we think it is, because we just read it without knowing all the things that are happening, right? So, it's hard to take all the data of Paul's letter to the Romans without, understanding that there's no single reason why he wrote this letter, right? That you can, like, this is the reason why he wrote it, right? There's no single reason that adequately explains why he wrote to the Romans, but it is helpful to distinguish between, like, the different types of reasons and why the letter was written and what's kind of the situation around it. And you can kind of get, you'll see that there's several purposes which Paul was seeking to accomplish by writing this letter, okay? So what we want to do is take a look at things in three different ways. First, we just want to, have everyone have a clear and accessible entry into understanding Romans, right? It's very highly complex, and there's a lot of discussion on it, but we want to at least have an entry point where people say, oh, this is kind of the general feeling of it. And the second thing is to kind of give an account of the relationship between the reasons why Romans was written, right? And you'll see that there's a combination, you have to understand it, there's a combination of different things, different reasons and occasions of the letter, okay? And of course, it is very easy for us to just say it was written for this, like a single reason hypothesis. It's just written for this reason, to just give us some type of clarity, right? However, the problem is there's just... it fails to account for all the data of Romans, like all the things that are said. Okay, so it is more attractive to have this multi-reason hypothesis of Romans, which better accounts for all the sheer complexity and scope of this letter, but then it becomes super hard to really relate and understand the whole concept, like the conceptual part of it, right? So that's the second reason. And third, we just want to see the relationship between the different reasons why Paul wrote Romans, okay? So let's get into it. So let's take a look at Paul's missionary purpose, right? When he was writing this, when we get into him writing about the book of Romans, right? So let's get into this. So there's going to be a couple reasons, other reasons out there why people or scholars are thinking that Paul actually wrote the book of Romans. And one thing that we do know is when you get to the end of the letter that he wrote to the Romans, he did talk about his quest or his missions to go to the West, right? So he's already been doing a lot of work in the East. He's done a lot of mission trips. The churches are getting strong, and he wanted to pass through, like stop by Rome on his way to Spain. Right, so this is one of the interesting things is people could look at that as he's actually getting ready to go to Spain, and you'll actually see in the scriptures that Paul was kind of waiting or passing through Rome to make it a base, and maybe even have it a base where he receives provisions and some, I don't know whether it's provisions, rations, equipment, or things to help him, protection as he goes over to Spain and whatnot too. So that's quite interesting also. But that's one of the many reasons. But unlike most of Paul's letters, the occasion of why the letter to the Romans was written is not very obvious. We're just guessing with all the different things that are written there. So although there seems to be a clear purpose statement, right, it's not clear why Paul would have written the bulk of the book to support that purpose. Right? So the purpose you can see is written in, I believe it's going to be in Acts chapter 15, right? And in Acts chapter 15, you're going to see here his purpose and his mission to write to the Romans. It says, we have heard that some went out from us without our authorization and disturbed you, troubling your minds by what they said. So we all agreed to choose some men and send them to you with our dear friends Barnabas and Paul, men who have risked their lives for the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, we are sending Judas and Silas to confirm by word of mouth what we are writing. And then it goes on So you are to, basically, it's kind of giving you some mission purpose of what is going on. But when you read the rest of the book, it doesn't really support that purpose which we just read. Okay, there's no indication he's responding to questions from the Roman church, nor does he address reported problems in the church similar to 1 Corinthians or 1 Thessalonians. So Paul has yet to visit the church, and it doesn't appear he's had an influence on the church prior to this letter. Right? So if you compare that to, like, say, the book of Colossians, in Colossians example, a church was founded by a disciple of Paul, and that's why he had some influence in the church of the Colossians, right? So the consensus view until modern scholarship is that the main reason Paul wrote Romans is to set forth his theology in clear terms. And Paul, begins the book of Romans with sin, then on to salvation by grace, the role of the law, sanctification, and finally the practice of the Christian life. And for many, Romans is as close to a systematic theology as we can get from Paul. And in fact, many modern systematic theologies follow the same general outline of the book of Romans. But if this is like Pauline theology, like this is what Paul's writing about, there's a great deal missing. Like, for instance, it doesn't talk a lot about the resurrection of Jesus, for example, and it's difficult to account for Romans chapter 9 through 11. Like, we're not sure what that is about. So Paul's discussion of Israel is often treated like a digression from his main point, as if it could be dropped from the book without damaging Paul's argument. And one additional factor is Paul's letters are all written in some historical and social context, right? So he didn't appear to write books for the sake of putting his thoughts down for future generations to read and ponder, but it was for that situation, that context of what they were going through at that moment, right? So is there a more specific reason why Paul wrote Romans? Or is Paul responding to a situation within the Roman church? And there are several suggestions explaining Paul's pastoral response. So first, since the Roman church was not established by an apostle, Paul wrote Romans to provide the church with an apostolic presentation of the gospel, right? So that's one of the reasons people are thinking. And Paul would do this in person when he arrives in Rome, but the letter offers a pre-read for the church to prepare them before Paul's arrival, right? A second reason could be Christian Jews expelled from Rome by Claudius returned to find the house churches in Rome now organized much differently than the Jews' synagogue, and the Jewish Christians found they were not the minority within a Gentile church. And Paul therefore wrote Romans to encourage the Gentiles to live in harmony with Jewish Christians, right? But this suggestion has it's difficult because there's no evidence that the Gentile converts had rejected distinctive Jewish practices, right? So unlike if you go to Galatia or like the book of Galatians, it's possible the only Gentile converts in Rome were God-fearing Gentiles and quite happy with most Jewish practices. Okay, so there's a second reason. Third reason, since the status of the law is an important issue in Romans, Paul may have written because Christian Jews who continue to observe the law were now in conflict with law-free Gentile Christians. And this is like other Pauline churches, but it's not clear Gentiles in the Roman church had rejected the Jewish law. Like, we're not even sure about that. So there isn't even evidence that of Judaizers, right? Judaizers are the ones that are trying to make people more like the Jews, right? And Roman Gentile Christians do not seem to have, they didn't seem to have struggled, right, with Judaizers, right, like the Galatian Christians did. So Romans chapter 14-15 is unclear on who the weak and strong are and vague about the actual like issues at stake. So there may have been some God-fearing Gentiles who kept some, the law, and other Gentiles who came into the church who were not at all attracted to Jewish traditions, but we're not sure. Right, so that could be a possible reason. A fourth reason why Paul could have wrote this, it's possible Paul didn't consider the Roman Christians to have been evangelized yet, right? So in Romans chapter 15, Paul says he's written boldly to the church so that the offering of the Gentiles may be acceptable, sanctified by the Holy Spirit. The letter, therefore, kind of demands a response to the gospel from the Roman readers with respect to Paul's understanding of the gospel. Fifth, another reason could be it's possible Paul wanted the Roman Christians to hear his gospel in order to draw them, I don't know what the right word for this is. The word they use is like an apostolic orbit, like being in the orbit of the apostles, right? And what we need to understand from this, like since Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles, he may have felt the Gentile believers were part of his commission regardless of how they originally came to hear the gospel, right? So when you look at Romans chapter 15, it could be an apology for taking as long as he has to come to Rome, the largest and most important city in the empire. So he's like, oh, you got to bring it into the orbit of the apostles, meaning I'm the one in charge of Gentiles. So, I apologize. Basically, Paul's like, I apologize for not coming any sooner, even if they didn't even know he was going to come, right? Or thought he was going to come in the first place. But if the Roman churches had grown to the extent Nero could use them as a scapegoat, so Paul could be, accused of overlooking a significant population of Gentile Christians since he was the apostle to the Gentiles, right? So when you look at this, all these possible reasons of why he wrote this, it could be any of these five. It could be a combination of them. Why Paul wrote the letter to the Roman church. We also had that other one. He's going into Spain, so he needs provisions. It could be like a physical thing, not physical, but more of him getting provisions and them supporting his missions into Spain. But it's possible he was motivated to write the letter, because he was moving into a new stage of his apostolic ministry rather than to meet some pastoral need in the church, right? So for many, Paul write Romans. That's what that's another thing we just said. He's promoting his planned trip to Spain, right? So that could be a sixth reason. So there are many, many different reasons why Paul was writing Romans. So let me just finish things off with a quick overview of each of the chapters of the book of Romans. Like, what do they consist of, right? So a lot of people say that this is Paul's best writing, masterfully written exposition on God's grace and the righteousness that comes by grace through faith, okay? So this book, the book of Romans, we should read this a lot, is the foundation of the entire Christian faith and has changed the hearts of many as they read and understand this wonderful, wonderful book. So please read this as much as you can, right? So let's start off with Romans chapter 1. Okay, so Romans chapter 1 covers Paul's introduction to the book of Romans, as well as building a case against the entire world that we were guilty before God. Okay, and the reason for writing the book of Romans was to share the gospel and teach that our righteousness comes by faith in Jesus Christ apart from what we can do to earn it. So not earned, but through the grace of the cross. Okay, now chapter 2 talks about God's righteous judgment. And it's kind of to admonish the Jews that living by the law and circumcision does not make them righteous in God's eyes, right? Not by your works, but by faith, right? So this comes as quite a shock, but Paul stresses that living by rules and regulations only brings about judgment and condemnation. So Paul concludes that a true Jew is one that has experienced circumcision of the heart by the Spirit of God. And of course, they were trying to get the Gentiles to be circumcised also, but he's saying, no, the true circumcision is of the heart and not the physical thing. Chapter 3 is about righteousness apart from the law, okay? So Romans 3 completes the accusation that both the Jews and the Gentiles are guilty before God, and now the prosecution can rest and the defense begins, right? So Paul switches gears by explaining that the righteousness that the law was powerless to give us, God did by sending Jesus, and he maintains that this righteousness comes by faith to all who believe in Christ Jesus apart from obeying the law. Okay? So this is talking about just salvation itself. Without Jesus, it is impossible, which makes sense. You can't earn it. Okay? Chapter 4 says we're justified by faith. So chapter 4 is the proof that faith has always been the means for justification, and Paul reflects back to the Old Testament patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were justified by faith, not works. Right? This is also talked about in James chapter 2, right? And he talks about the patriarchs to illustrate his point. And Paul uses this illustration to prove that Gentiles were part of this promise given to Abraham, and the whole world was blessed through him because he chose to believe God rather than his circumstances. And because of this, his faith was credited to him as righteousness. Chapter 5 is the results of justification by faith. So Romans 5 is powerful. And it is very instrumental in understanding that we are reconciled with God through Jesus Christ. God did not spare his own son, but graciously gave him for us to undo what Adam did in the Garden of Eden. So death came through one man's sin, right? That's Romans chapter 5:14. But life came more abundantly in every way through the gift of Jesus. That's also 1 Corinthians 15:21-22. Paul stresses that this reconciliation is not something we are waiting for, but in every sense of the word, believers are righteous, holy, and acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Okay? Chapter 6 talks about freedom from sin. Okay? Freedom from sin is it kind of eloquent. It teaches that we are born again, right? When we are born again, sin's power is broken in our lives. And Paul maintains that we are freed from sin and made alive to God through Jesus Christ. And our sinful nature was crucified with him when we were baptized into his death. And now through Jesus, we have received the gift of God, which is eternal life. Which moves to number 7. It's talking about us being married to Christ, right? And shows us the difference between living bound to the law and living by the Spirit of God. So we're no longer in bondage as slaves and are now free to belong to God. And the struggle with sin may still be evident, but Paul maintains we have no obligation to succumb to it. We are instructed to live by the Spirit and bear fruit according to our new nature, right? As new creations. Chapter 8 goes into life of the Spirit. Right? How living by the Spirit gives peace, and peace rules in our hearts, and the Holy Spirit within us continually testifies to us that we are children of God, and he gives us assurance with God to convince us that nothing will ever separate us from his love. And of course, that's this week's scripture, verse 18 comes in, that hope is greater than all the suffering we go through. And then we go through chapter 9, that we're the children of the promise through faith in Christ. It teaches us that it's not natural children that are God's children, but rather children of the promise, right? So not God's literal children, but children of the promise. And this comes through faith, right? Not by works of the law. Once again, this theme comes out again. And then Romans chapter 10 talks about the word of faith, teaches the word of faith, confessing with our mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, right? And believing this in our hearts, then we are saved. Nothing more, nothing less. That is the ultimate way of salvation, right? More than anything else. Chapter 11 talks about the remnant of Israel and discusses that although Israel as a whole rejected Jesus as the Messiah and killed him, right? There's still a remnant chosen by grace. And their dismissal of Jesus has blessed the world because this salvation message was then open to the Gentiles. Okay? And then chapter 12 talks about us being living sacrifices. It's a very, very big verse in verse 2, right? That we no longer live by the pattern of this world, but we have become living sacrifice. Our bodies become a living sacrifice, right? So we have to serve and, we renew our minds through the truth of God's word, and then we have to serve, and we have to bless the body of Christ through our gifts, and above all, loving and being devoted to one another. And then chapter 13 is submission to authorities. Chapter 14, very big verse on the weak and the strong, and encourages us to consider everything we do not to make the weak stumble. Then Romans 15 talks about unity among believers, and then it ends off in chapter 16 with commendations and greetings. It's final farewell and instructions to the believers in Rome. So that's kind of where we can see this. It's really, really an amazing book. Read it chapter by chapter, and I hope it's something that you can learn about the basics of faith when it comes to us coming to Christ or coming to believe. And, the same holds true to how we believe today, too. None of us would be raptured, and none of us are saved without the sacrifice that the Lord has done. Impossible, right? And that's true. No one can deny that. That is absolute truth. So if we understand this, then it helps us to get to the next stage. Yeah, it's not what we did. It's what the condition that was set for us to be saved and raptured. And then now we have this debt we have to pay. And it's not for us to think that we're saved by our works. No, we're saved by Christ. And then after we're saved, what are you going to do and how are you going to live your life is going to be the big thing. Okay, so that is the word study for today on the book of Romans. Hope it's something that you guys really were able to enjoy and get a better idea of why it was written and different parts about it and what Paul was doing. And I hope it's something that will inspire you to read the book of Romans too. Okay, so go ahead, leave a comment below. If you do read any books in the book of books, chapters in Romans, go ahead and put your thoughts on it too. Okay. So that is the word study for today, which also means we're going to get into today's song of choice. And on Tuesdays, I do play, it's a Korean Tuesday. So I'm choosing a song from this guy named Im Young-un. And the person that introduced me to him is my mom. And this guy won some audition contest for trot singing, like the old style Korean singing. My mom loves this guy. And the song that was recommended is a song called Hero. All right, so everyone, for this Korean Tuesday, this is Im Young-un with Hero.
세상이란 장애물이 너의 앞길을 가로막을 때 날 봐 언제나 너의 곁에 내가 있어 불안 따윈 일도 없을 테니 이렇게 always always 내가 너를 지켜줄게 나를 믿고 가 거친 세상이지만 나를 믿고 가 나와 함께라면 ready to go 창밖으로 비춰오는 태양 시시각각 바뀌는 구름의 모양 공기를 가르며 와닿는 바람의 향기가 느껴지니 이렇게 always always 내가 너를 지켜줄 테니 나를 믿고 가 거친 세상이지만 나를 믿고 가 나와 함께라면 ready to go let's go go right away when we go 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 far away 참 다행이지 나의 옆이 너라서 내 어깨에 기대어 손을 꼭 잡고 같이 어디로든 가자 나를 믿고 가 거친 세상이지만 나를 믿고 가 나와 함께라면 ready to go let's go go right away when we go 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 far away
And there it is, recommended by my mom. That is Im Young-un with the song Hero. And I do believe that it was used in K-drama too. I'm not sure which one it is, but I think my mom knows, but I'm not going to ask her about that right now. Okay. So that brings us into the last segment for today. And today's last segment is kind of the thoughts of the week, and it's going to be about family, balancing family and Provi life. And this is something that's really interesting for me too, because I would say that I went through, I'm a very extreme person. I went through some extreme things, and it made me, being with my parents for the last 4 months, I would have to say that there's a lot of things that I thought about when it came to family and province and how to balance it properly. And that is why I am, So let me get into this. Let me get some of these thoughts. And what is the right balance? So I think one of the questions that people might ask is, what does it mean to give up everything for this history? You know what I mean? What does it mean to give up everything for this history? We read the stories in the Bible. People are dying for the history, and it's so extreme. And we look at ourselves and we're like, oh my gosh, this is what it means to live our life for this history, right? And we kind of get into our heads, what does it mean to run with all your heart, will, and life? And this is something that I do believe that many people can misunderstand, not because there is one right way to do it, because I do believe some people have to give up everything. There's no choice, right? But it is different from each person's situation and circumstance. And let me tell you what mine was like. Okay, so for me, mine was a very extreme case. When I was younger in this history, when I first came at 19 years old, from the former faith, and you had that mindset of giving up everything for Christ, like giving up everything. It doesn't matter, like no regrets, right? And as I lived in this history, I came to this history, and then I lived in LA first for like 4.5 years. And then after that, I came back to Canada for 3 years. And interesting, right after that, I went on missions trips and traveling all over the world, and I saw my parents every 3 to 4 years. And every time I came back to see my parents and my family, I would see them maybe for a week, at the max a month. Right? Every 3 to 4 years. So 2005, I was with my parents. I came back for 3 years to help the pioneering church here for 3 years until I went on to missions work. I went to Europe first, and then I came back in 2007. Pastor Joan had a tour, and we were here for 1 week in Canada, and then I came back. Then after that, I went back to start traveling to like Africa and Oceania, Southeast Asia, and stuff like that too. And then 2010, I came back to Canada for I believe a month or so, maybe more than. It could have been more than a month, but it was about a month. And then after that, so that's 3 years. And then after that, I came back in 2015. So that's 5 years later. And then I came back for 3 days in 2016 or 2017 for Canada. Pastor Joan's tour is only 3 days. And the entire time I was at the conference. So I didn't even really count that because I saw my parents twice, when I came and when I left. And then now, 5 years later, it's 2022. And I've been here for 4 months, which has been the longest out of all of them, right? So 2007 to 10 is 3 years, 10 to 15 is 5 years, and then 2017 was 2 years later, but I only came here for 3 days, and it was all for a conference, crazy busy, so I didn't really see my parents that much. And then 5 years later is 2022. Right now, I've been here for 4 months so far, and basically since 2005, it's been 17 years, and I've come back here like 5 times. And if I took all those times together, besides this trip I'm in right now, you're looking at about 2 months, maybe 2 months, right? So when you think about that, less than 2 months actually. So when you think about that, I never spent a lot of time, and I basically, for 20 years, I've been in this system. Those 17 years, I was running like crazy, and even during the time I was living with my parents and stuff, I was crazy busy working a full-time job. 6 days a week, 11 hours a day, and then running Providence. And I never saw my parents, even during that time, for like another 3 months there. But, giving up everything to run, even our family, like even my family, I kind of gave up, right? And, at that time, my priority was nothing but Providence, nothing else. And because I was so, like, my number one priority by far, I'm talking by far up the list, was Providence. I kind of neglected a lot of my family duties and stuff like that too. But I was running like crazy. And now, after having these 4 months spent, now I would include my time in LA, which was another 3 months. I would say, 4 months, which means 8 months. It's been 8 months since I've been away from doing a mission, spending time with my family and stuff like that. 4 months in LA, and then another 4 months here with my parents. A couple things I realized. And number one is, I gave everything up for God for like 22, 23 years. I'm in my 24th year is coming up. And one thing that I'm really thankful for is that I'm kind of getting everything back now. Like, relationships are really good, spending time with my family, being able to give them presents, spending like Christmas with them, New Year's, my mom's 70th birthday, my dad's 75th birthday coming up in a couple of weeks, being able to see my nephew's celebrating his 5th birthday, so many other different things, right? And then in July, my niece is coming, so I'm super happy about that, right? And my first realization is, if you give up for God, whatever you give up, God will give it back to you. right? And that's something I was like, wow, that's something that is so true, that I don't have these strained or like crazy relationship with my family, but it's really, really good right now, right? But like I said, I think it's different for each person, the situation and circumstance. And this is something that this was the path that God gave to me, for me. Could I have done better? Of course I could have. I could have like done some of my duties as a child, like as a son, right? And because I was able to leave everything aside, I was able to travel around the world, help churches, pioneer churches, just spending my life absolutely for this history and nothing else. But one thing I did think was I could have given, I think I also gave maybe the wrong image of what it means to run with all your heart, will, in life. That people might start thinking that they have to run the same way as me, like literally give up everything, not visit their family, not see them 2-3 years, whatever it was. And it was interesting because I was praised for doing this, right? And I wouldn't say it's bad that I got praised. It's probably more bad that other people thought that they had to do the same thing. And I don't think, like when I look at it in generally speaking, I don't think it should be like that. I do believe the way that I look at the way Sunseem treats his family, the way that he took care of his parents even when they didn't realize, the way that he took them around the world, and his elder brother was evangelized this year. Even Pastor Joan praying 7 years for her family, her mom and both her mom and dad were evangelized, and on top of it, 2 of her sisters and their families are in Providence too. So and then now they have such a great support system. Sunseem has a great support system with his brothers and his family also. So when you look at these things, it's like, yeah, he really takes care of family. Of course, he does what he's supposed to do, but he takes care of his family, right? And I was thinking that to do things in a reasonable way, to do things in a balanced way, the importance of family, right? So it's not just running Providence. But think about this. If you're running and doing even if you live in the same house with your wife, it's not like you spend 24 hours with them. You still work. You still do the things you need to do. And then you come back home and you spend that time with your family, whatever it is, right? But because that family dynamics and the family is doing well, it's very, very easy to come home comfortable, right? And you need that balance where it's not going to be where you don't want to go home because they don't understand you. You're always fighting. There's always there's this stress because of your relationship with your family, and it's not going well. Like that just makes things worse. And then because of that, you're going to burn out, right? And you may not have a peaceful place. Your relationship with your family is strained. It's stressful. And this is why also we need to take care of our families well too, in a balanced manner. It doesn't mean that you're spending all your time with your family. Like I don't recommend that either, because still we have to make this history. But there needs to be a balance that you have to figure out which is the best way, right? Which means that don't neglect. Take care of them, right? But also we need to take care of our duties in this church, in this history too, which means that I do think one thing we have to get really good at doing is saying no, right? Saying no meaning not Providence. I'm saying Providence and family. Some things, sometimes, you have a good relationship with your family. You say, oh, I got a church event. Guess what? When I have my family events here, not everyone comes out every single event. They don't. They don't come out every event. And because the relationship's so good, it's very understanding that sometimes you miss things here and there because there's a church event, this is happening and that is happening. Very, very understandable, right? But if the family situation is not good and strained already, then missing things, they're just going to resent you even more. But you need to have that really good relationship, taking care of each other, going out together, not having that strain in your relationship. But also being able to say no. Sometimes you're going to have to skip a church thing for a family thing. Like, for instance, imagine it's like my mom's 70th birthday, which is huge. Am I going to miss everything? I was like, oh, no, I can't. I got to teach. I do a lecture. No, just, a lecture. I can reschedule a lecture, but I cannot reschedule my mom's 70th birthday. You know what I mean? So we have to kind of be able to balance and be able to figure it out through prayer and wisdom, right? Prayer and wisdom is such a big thing that I thought to myself even now is, wow, I have this great relationship now, but now I have to start thinking about what is the perfect balance, right? Not just neglecting completely, right? But they know I have my life. I know they have their life, and we have to live our lives in the proper way for ourselves. But when it's time for these special events and occasions, then we meet each other. Sometimes we'll meet on Christmas, and then I'll go to church on New Year's. Or sometimes I'll do a church event on the 24th, and then I have my family event on the 25th, whatever it is. But then it's like, oh, we have a church event 24th and 25th. So those of you who can't, oh, please come out. Yeah, I understand that. But yeah, I do believe there is I can't give you the exact thing because everyone's situation is different. But there is that balance we have to figure out, right? Where we're not going too extreme. But like I said, for myself, there are certain cases where certain people, God is calling them to a very extreme life, right? That needs that type of thing, right? And I hope it's something that we can pray and figure that out, the path that God has set out for us. But even though that path is set out, like I said, I didn't do a very good job. I put the priorities so high that I completely neglected my family more than anything else. But at this time, I hope it's something that we can really understand at a higher level. Okay, so, these are just my thoughts, and I hope it's something that you guys can think about also, and that we really get ourselves into that position where we can have that great relationship, where family is a very peaceful place. Going home is a good thing. Like, it's not something where, we're not giving up so much on both sides, but we have that nice balance. And I do believe that balance happens through trial and error while attending events and realizing some of these events are not worth it, and attending other like church stuff or family stuff. And you kind of, as you go through it, you begin to realize, oh, this is unnecessary, this is necessary. Like sometimes I go to some family things, I'm like, oh, I didn't have to come here, right? And you're going to realize that more and more, but we want to be those that understand it and balance it really well so that we have that great relationship. So eventually, even in the end, we can evangelize our parents and our family too. Okay, so that is the thoughts of the week for family and providence balance, and I hope it's something that we can balance really well too. Leave it in the comments too if you have any questions about what you guys think about evangelism of your family or whatever it is, because that's a big topic that maybe we can even cover it for Q&A on Thursday. All right, so that is the last segment, thoughts of the week on family and Provi life, the balance. And I hope you guys really enjoyed that time, which means we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday. We're going to have an awesome Wednesday service. Everyone have an amazing and awesome day. Have an awesome Tuesday. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive, I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this.